music you're hearing now is a 2013 recording of American composer Tony Cicoria's Lightning Sonata. It's a gentle piece, a melancholic piece at times, reminiscent of, let's say, Frédéric Chopin or the Russian composer Alexander Scriabin. But there's something else interesting about Lightning Sonata, not to do with the music, but its inception, where it came from, the idea behind it. Because how Tony Cicoria came up with Lightning Sonata illustrates beautifully how we humans generate ideas generally, and a little hint, it might not be exactly how you think. Cicoria was born in 1952 and had, by all accounts, a typical childhood with no particular interest in music beyond a few piano lessons that he soon grew bored with. He earned his BS in biology from the Citadel Military College of South Carolina and graduated from the Medical University of South Carolina and the University of Virginia Orthopedic Surgery Residency. And for the next 20 years or so, that's what he did. Tony Cicoria was a practicing surgeon at Shenango Memorial Hospital in New York. If that's all there was to his life, then with the best will in the world, we probably wouldn't be talking about him today. But it isn't.
It was a weekend in August 1994, and I'm down on the ground floor and I'm running the barbecue. It was a nice, beautiful day when I started, and my brother-in-law came out to give me a break, so I went to the payphone to call my mom. The payphone is connected to the building, and as I went out, dialed the number, and I let it ring 7 or 8 times, and she didn't pick up, so I went to hang up. And as I got the phone about a foot away from my face, I heard this loud crack, and this big flash came out of the phone and hit me in the face. Yeah, the lightning had hit the building and exited through the phone, and I just happened to be in the way.
Tony Cicoria was lucky, as the person directly outside his phone booth was an intensive care unit nurse. She performed CPR, saving his life. Now, a lightning strike on a person in the US is more common than you think, 1 in 15,300 according to the National Weather Service. But let's be honest, it's still pretty rare. What's even rarer though is what happened next to Tony Cicoria, and it cuts right to the heart of the topic of this video. You see, in the weeks after the strike, something very strange happened. Tony Cicoria developed an insatiable desire to listen to piano music. He began to buy recordings like a man possessed, coming to love Vladimir Ashkenazy and Frédéric Chopin in particular. He started to buy up the sheet music too and play their compositions himself, and within 3 months Cicoria was doing little else. He spent the next 10 or so years submerged in this new life until in October 2007 he debuted his first piano composition in Westport, Connecticut. From disinterest in music to obsession within days. I have never met another person with a story like Tony Cicoria's, wrote British neurologist and writer Oliver Sacks in a New Yorker article in 2007. And yet, these sudden bursts of creativity are common in history. A few famous examples include Albert Einstein, who in 1905, known as his miracle year, released 4 papers of major significance, 2 of which changed the course of physics. Einstein's forefather, Isaac Newton, had a similar burst of creativity when in plague swept Britain in 1665 he locked himself away in Cambridge University and filled his notebooks with ideas that would eventually become Principia Mathematica. And finally, the German composer Richard Wagner, who, down on his luck and lacking inspiration, his finances in shambles, went for a long walk in the countryside, returned home for a nap, and in his dream heard the musical theme that would eventually become his masterpiece, The Ring Cycle. On the surface, all these stories seem to describe eureka moments, so named for the Greek scholar Archimedes, who apparently shouted the word, meaning I found it, when he stepped into a bath and realised that the water displaced matched the volume of his body. Yet there's a lot more to all of them than that. Indeed, research suggests that true eureka moments are rare and that the conditions needed for the birth of good ideas are far more complex. The first is the right environment. This can take many forms: a place that tolerates mistakes, challenges openly and without fear, a place without interruptions, and even space itself. The feeling of not being closed in can have an impact on the production of ideas. Many creative figures over the years have spoken of taking walks just before or as their big ideas hit them. Wagner earlier, who went on a walk just before his snooze that led to the ring cycle. Einstein too was fond of walking alone in nature and understood the benefits it might bring. The person who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd. The person who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever seen before. So, the right environment is vital for idea generation. So too is the leveraging of prior knowledge to make new connections. 400 years ago, French essayist Michel de Montaigne wrote, "Bees plunder the flowers here and there, but after they make of them honey, which is all theirs." And he's right, the magpieing of prior achievements is a key part of forming new ideas. Prior knowledge, so the theory goes, acts as stepping stones from the knowledge we have to the knowledge we didn't know existed. Take, for example, one of the most revolutionary business ideas ever, Henry Ford's creation of the assembly line, which sped up the construction of cars. Like all ideas, this one didn't pop out of nowhere. Ford was inspired by cigarette factories of the previous century and the Chicago meatpacking industry. "I invented nothing new," he said. "I simply assembled into a car the discoveries of other men behind whom were centuries of work." Tony Cicoria too, despite his post-lightning strike love of music, leveraged past knowledge. He remembered those piano lessons of his youth, though his fingers were rusty, and those CDs of Chopin are clearly audible in his Lightning Sonata. What is not perhaps as obvious is the importance to an idea generator of being open to the subconscious and semi-conscious mind. If this sounds a little like woo-woo as it did to me when I first read it, I'd encourage you to keep an open mind. Paul Selly, Assistant Professor of Psychology and Neuroscience at the Duke Institute for Brain Sciences, is also an artist. Using a special glove called Dormio that jars him awake just as he's falling asleep, he wrote down ideas for pieces of art and made them, as well as others created from more conscious ideas. Selly was surprised to find, when he asked his friends which paintings they preferred, it was those from the subconscious that came out on top. This semi-lucid boon to creativity holds up anecdotally. Richard Wagner, as mentioned, came up with the Ring Cycles prelude in his sleep. Fellow composer Tchaikovsky described his own creative state as somnambulistic. And famously, Spanish painter Salvador Dali used a similar technique to researcher Selly to jerk himself awake just as he was nodding off, then frantically scribbled down what was in his mind. Lightning Sonatas Tony Cicoria too had his first experience of composing in a dream. "I was in a tux on stage. I was playing something I had written. I woke up startled and the music was still in my head." Last but not least in the list of necessities for creativity is time. This takes two forms. The first can be summarised by a single fact. The average age at which notable innovations are achieved is increasing. In 1900 the age was 30. 100 years later, at the turn of the millennium, the age had increased 33% to 40. Why? It comes down to subject knowledge. Back in 1900, a young scholar or artist learning everything there was to know about their subject could do so 10 years faster than in 2000. To illustrate this, Einstein was 27 during his miracle year. Had it come 100 years later, he would have been 36. Time too is needed for an idea to incubate. The business theorist Peter Drucker said, "It is not the idea that's of value, rather the effective placement of those ideas into situations that develop into action." Back to Wagner for this one, who spent 26 years perfecting his Ring Cycle before finally releasing it to the public. And the subject of our video is no different. Despite his newfound love of music hitting him like a lightning bolt, it still took him 10 years of careful submerging, practice and composition before he performed his Lightning Sonata. The creator of famous detectives Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle, once wrote, "Our ideas must be as broad as nature if they are to interpret nature." And he's right. Ideas are the lifeblood of progress, driving innovation, solving problems and moving society forward. And yet the data on ideas paints a complex picture. Worryingly, the creation of truly innovative ideas appears to be declining. A Stanford University study suggests that research effort is rising substantially, while research productivity is declining sharply. Understanding the intricate dance of knowledge, subconscious processes and time that births great ideas gives us direction and hope. By nurturing these elements, we can create fertile ground for creativity to flourish. And while Tony Cicoria's Lightning Sonata may not have changed the world, it's no exaggeration to say that the next world-changing idea could just be a lightning strike away. The thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you got as much out of the video watching it as I did researching and making it. Without ideas, we really would be nothing in this world, so keep them coming. If you did enjoy what you've seen, there'll be plenty more coming up, so join up in the usual ways, and I will see you next time.